Good morning or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. My name is Darlene Chu Bryant. I am the Executive Director of GlobalSF here in San Francisco. I'm here to welcome you to today's webinar on Brazil and California, developing innovation and business opportunities. So much has happened to our world over the past 2 years, where the pandemic brought on challenges in supply chain, getting vaccinations, and most importantly, keeping our people employed. However, there has been a silver lining, and it has been the opportunity to establish more relationships virtually and realizing that there are really no borders anymore when we're talking about business and economic development. A little bit about GlobalSF. Who are we? We are an economic development organization established as a nonprofit. We promote economic and trade development opportunities between the city of San Francisco and the world's key markets. Since 2015, Latin SF was established as a public-private partnership to focus on opportunities in and for Latin America with San Francisco. We are the gateway for economic development between Latin America and San Francisco and the rest of the globe for companies, entrepreneurs, and organizations. Our work involves creating meaningful connections for Latin American businesses and startups, solidifying their business in San Francisco and beyond. Additionally, we can introduce San Francisco-based companies and other Silicon Valley organizations to our Latin American network in order to foster economic opportunities. Today, we not only support the great city of San Francisco, but we work very closely with the state of California and enjoy our role in connecting the dots all over the world, with the Center of Innovation being right here in San Francisco. And on to today's program. I am delighted and grateful to have our Lieutenant Governor Ambassador Eleni Kounalakis and the Consul General from Brazil, Ambassador Svg Ventures. As you see, both of them have been ambassadors. The current ambassador to the United States, Nestor Forster Jr., will also be joining us today, and all our partners joining us to talk about the opportunities. I am now delighted to introduce Ambassador Ganem, the Brazilian Consul General, to give some welcome remarks on behalf of Brazil.
Thank you, Darlene. Good morning for you. Good afternoon here. It's a great pleasure, Darlene, to be partnering with you and also with the SF Global in this webinar and other initiatives to foster Brazilian and California cooperation. I would like also to express my appreciation that the California Chamber of Commerce and the APEX, Brazilian Agency for Trading and Foreign Affairs, joining us in this program. Additionally, I would like to express my special gratitude to first Lieutenant Governor, Ambassador Kounalakis, with whom I had a very positive conversation about our cooperation in our first semesters. My colleague, Nestor Forster, Ambassador of Brazil to the United States, who is joining us today, Mr. Celso Moretti, Dr. Celso Moretti. He is the president of Brazilian Company for Promotion of Agriculture, Embrapa. Embrapa is the main institution responsible for the development of Brazil, for transforming Brazil and probably the most dynamic agribusiness producer in the world. Today, coincidentally, I am here in São Paulo with my friend Tomás Zanotto. He is the head of the trade and foreign investments in Federation of Industries in São Paulo. The Fiesp is one of the main Brazilian economic institutions, gathers many big Brazilian companies. I would like to strengthen my previous conversation with Lieutenant Governor and also with you, Darlene, and other partners in San Francisco. We highlight the fact that there is a large space for cooperation between Brazil and California, considering that California's participation in Brazil and U.S. economic relations is below its potential. Just to give you an example, the total bilateral trade in 2019 between Brazil and the United States, I mean trade and services, was $105 billion. And with California, it was $5 billion, which represents a share much lower than the GDP share of California and the GDP of the United States. So we agreed with Lieutenant Governor, with you, Darlene, and other institutions that we should work on promoting awareness of the bilateral possibilities. And this webinar, of course, is a result from this conversation, is a step in this direction. As you all know, Brazil is a large and diversified economy, from agribusiness to aircraft industry to a fast development in tech sector, especially in fintech, in agri-tech, and also in development of software. In this regard, I would like to give you, to conclude with a very positive note. It's an information about the launching by the New York Stock Exchange of probably the highest valuable IPO ever in the tech industry, and it will be a Brazilian fintech company on December 9th. So I hope Lieutenant Governor Darlene and other parties that this webinar will establish a very positive environment for increasing the cooperation between Brazil and California. Thank you so much.
Oops. And I'm trying to get back on. Thank you so much, Consul General. It's really good to hear all that. And we definitely look forward to working more closely with your office. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about how to put together a delegation to Brazil in the not so distant future. And so, you know, you had alluded to agreements between the US and Brazil. And in 2011, the United States and Brazil signed an agreement on trade and economic cooperation to enhance cooperation on trade and investment between the Western Hemisphere's two largest economies. The agreement expands our direct trade and investment relationship by providing a framework. Brazil is currently our 14th largest goods trading partner with 73.7 billion in total two-way goods trade, and this happened all during 2019. Goods exported totaled $42.9 billion and goods imported totaled $30.8 billion. To provide insight into how this can all continue to work and expand and grow, we're introducing our first panel, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis and also Ambassador Forrester.
Thank you very much, Darlene. It is wonderful to see you here this morning. Ambassador Ganem, thank you for your comments. And it really is a great pleasure to be part of today's conference on strengthening business opportunities between California and Brazil. I'd really like to thank GlobalSF for coordinating today's webinar and for everything that you do in support of international trade and investment for California, of course, in particular, the San Francisco Bay Area. Good morning also to Ambassador Forrester. It is truly an honor to share the virtual stage with you, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. Today's conference and webinar comes at a unique time. We are over a year and a half into the new realities brought about by the COVID-19 global pandemic. Virtual meetings like this one have become the norm, allowing us to find new ways to keep working and in many cases be even more productive. It is true that our economies have been shaken, but resiliency has come from unexpected places, and we find ourselves focused on strengthening supply chains, addressing port congestion, and managing labor shortages. These are hardly the challenges we anticipated when the pandemic first upended our economies. And as businesses continue to innovate and adapt, it is up to government to be supportive while continuing to do everything possible to keep our people safe and healthy. When Governor Newsom and I were first sworn into office nearly 3 years ago, he asked me to serve as California's representative for international affairs and trade development. Together, we have focused on strengthening our cooperation with national and subnational governments, promoting foreign direct investment in California, and opening our doors to visiting delegations. As a former United States ambassador, I've been very honored to work with Governor Newsom to develop three major international priorities for California: trade, climate change, and immigration. Trade and economic development more broadly is the focus of today's conversation and the panel discussions that will follow. But our second priority, climate change, overlaps into any conversation about trade and investment in our state. California is building an economy that focuses on reaching our 2045 goal of carbon neutrality and a carbon-free electric grid. Decades of commitment to environmental protection through bipartisan leadership and with the strong support of our people has positioned us not just to reach our own goals, but to deliver climate solutions at scale, both here in California and around the world. Perhaps nowhere is this more apparent than our commitment to promoting the adoption of zero-emission vehicles. It was here in California where Tesla was able to succeed. Tesla relied on billions of dollars in R&D tax credits and ZEV rebate programs. It also benefited from selling cars in a state with the largest consumer market in the country. In 2020, ZEVs were California's #1 export, and we are doubling down on this success. Last year, Governor Newsom issued an executive order requiring all new vehicles sold in California to be zero emission by 2035. Last month, I had the opportunity to represent the governor and our state at the United Nations Global Climate Conference in Glasgow. I spoke of the damage climate change has already wrought on our state. 4 of the 5 most catastrophic fires happened last year alone, when we saw 4% of our state burn. This is an existential threat to all of us and a global crisis that requires global cooperation. Last year, California saw a $75 billion budget surplus. Governor Newsom and our legislature programmed $15 billion of that surplus into climate resiliency. I encourage all the businesses here today to explore trade and investment opportunities in this space. This includes finding creative solutions to transportation of goods and cost-effective, environmentally friendly manufacturing practices. California's final international priority, as I mentioned, is immigration. We do not set immigration policy at the state level, of course, but we have benefited disproportionately from generous US immigration policies. There is no doubt that we have become the world's 5th largest economy, if we were a country, in large measure because of the contributions made by immigrants. 27% of Californians are foreign born. The national average is about 14%. And half of us, myself included, have at least one immigrant parent. Our diversity makes us stronger, younger, more innovative, and more resilient. And we believe it is important to speak out that immigration has been a primary driver of California's economic success. On that note, let me conclude by recognizing that California is home to over 39,000 people who identify as Brazilian. And in 2020, two-way trade between California and Brazil was over $3.2 billion. Our people, our traditions, our values, our long historic ties all remind us of the potential for increasing partnerships between Brazil and California. And I'm sure we will touch on many of these topics during our conversation, Ambassador Forster. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Darlene. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. And Ambassador Forster, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Darlene. Ambassador Kunalakis, Lieutenant Governor of California, Ambassador Adaldo Canem, my good friend, Consul General of Brazil in San Francisco, all of you joining us here today. Let me just make a couple of points here about possible cooperation between Brazil and the great state of California. So as you are well aware, Brazil has a very strong relation with California, which includes a large array of areas of mutual interest. California's outstanding economic importance, its innovative environment, and technological dynamism are central components of its relationship with Brazil. In 1919, before the pandemic, total trade between Brazil and California reached almost $5 billion, which is more than the bilateral trade Brazil has with several of its South American neighbors, just to give you an example. And of course, there's tremendous potential for growth, as Ambassador Ganem has just pointed out. Silicon Valley has also attracted the interest of Brazilian startups that look for funding and eventually establish a subsidiary in California. Brazil is home to several large California-based companies, including Chevron, Cisco Systems, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, and so many others. Today, I'd like to single out 3 promising areas that can contribute to the prosperity of Brazil, California, and our societies. I want to touch on agribusiness opportunities, science, technology, and innovation, and space cooperation. So first, on agribusiness. As you know, in the past 50 years, Brazil went on from being a net importer of foodstuffs to playing an important role in food security around the world, helping to feed around 1 billion people. Since 1975, Brazilian agricultural output has increased more than 5-fold, while the land used by agriculture increased only 33%, thanks to an exponential growth in agricultural productivity. This achievement did not happen by chance. It was largely due to the work of the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, Embrapa, of whom you'll be hearing more later on in the program today, which has promoted science-based sustainable agriculture adapted to our own specific tropical conditions since the early 70s. Today there are more than 1,500 ag-tech companies operating in Brazil, many of them reaching new international markets and establishing new partnerships. California, of course, is a promising partner for them. On science and technology and innovation, as you know, Brazil has 23 unicorns, ranking #1 in Latin America and among the top 10 in the world on that criteria. And we at the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in a joint effort with other areas of the Brazilian government, have promoted the Brazilian ecosystem for research and development and innovation, supporting the creation of international networks and fostering investment in research and development. Brazil and the US have a long-standing relationship in science and technology. In 2020, we held in Brasilia the 5th Science and Technology Joint Commission meeting, and we approved a 4-year work plan to boost innovation projects from advanced manufacturing and hydrologic monitoring to biotechnology and space cooperation. Artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, 5G, hydrogen, digital transformation, and smart cities are some of the areas in which we see great potential for further cooperation with California. Now, let me just briefly touch on space cooperation. We signed in 2020 the Technological Safeguards Agreement, which allows American companies to launch satellites from the Alcântara Space Center in the Brazilian state of Maranhão in northeastern Brazil, one of the best places in the world to launch satellites. And it was approved by our Congress in record time. The agreement is already entered into force. And we are able to launch satellites from Alcântara with a reduction of around 30% in terms of the cost of fuel used because of its location just 2 degrees south of the equator. And we have already American companies lining up to use our base We have 4 companies scheduled to launch in the first semester of the coming year. Another great example of our bilateral partnership in space lies in our cooperation with NASA. Just last April, Brazil officially joined the Artemis Program, which is the most ambitious program since Apollo and comprised of hundreds of science and technology projects. Brazil was the 12th country to sign the Artemis Accords and the first in Latin America. This strategic space cooperation may be a milestone for our relationship. And of course, the private sector, universities and research institutions may also benefit from the huge potential of this initiative. Let me just conclude by saying that Brazil and the United States are great partners in trade, investment, and cooperation. And the Brazilian government and our private sector remain committed to deepening our partnership with the great state of California in the areas I mentioned and in so many others. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Norster. And I actually have, Forster, you seem to have answered all the questions I was going to ask both of you. However, and there seem to be so many areas where we can partner and collaborate, but what would be a priority and how do we start? Either one of you want to take a crack at this?
You know, I would be, Darlene, if I may, I'd be happy just to jump in and tear off of some of the things that the ambassador just said.
Yes.
First, it is really interesting to hear of all of the advances in aerospace that Brazil is moving forward with. Of course, the aerospace industry in California is extremely robust. And so I have no doubt that there are areas of growth and cooperation in that space. But I also want to note the similarities between Brazil and California when it comes to agriculture. And again, when we look at California agriculture, it is significantly impacted by climate change. And so innovation around the use of resources more efficiently, in particular water resources, is something that's being pioneered in California and is going to be important everywhere in the world as we confront a changing climate, as well as innovation around carbon capture and other farming techniques that allow both for conservation while continuing to produce food and agricultural products. But also that in farming practices, and I should actually also note the methane reduction agreements that the California and so many countries in the world agreed to it at Glasgow. All of these traditional areas of agriculture are being seen in California through the lens of climate resiliency. And so this is an enormous area for opportunity for Brazilian and California companies. So I would just highlight that area as well as the things that I mentioned in my remarks.
Lieutenant Governor, I could not agree more with you. You know, when we think about California, and specifically about San Francisco and the Bay Area, we think about technology, we think about Silicon Valley. So, you know, we have tremendous opportunities in areas which I didn't touch about, talked about, like, you know, health tech, fintech. But I'd like to concentrate on what you said about, you know, agriculture, the importance of technology for agriculture, because this is, you know, played a tremendous role in transforming Brazil from what I mentioned, a net importer of foodstuffs into an agricultural powerhouse, along with the United States and the state of California. But let me just point out in terms of, you know, the connection between the agricultural technology and the good environmental impact that we see, you know, science-based sustainable agriculture having in Brazil. You know, we are in many instances, and to a large extent, thanks to our Agricultural Research Corporation and what we've done in introducing technology into agriculture, we are today, Brazil is already today where many countries wish to be with their pledges at the Paris Agreement and at the UN agreements on this. Let me just point out just three brief things that Brazil brings on the table. Number one, about 2/3 of the Brazilian territory has still its native vegetation. It's very unique if you consider the continental size of Brazil to have 2/3 of our country still covered with its original vegetation, including over 80% of the Amazon rainforest. That enables us to host the largest biodiversity anywhere in the planet according to the UN. And the third thing, which is very important, is the fact that Brazil has a very sustainable energy mix, with about 50% of all the energy consumed in Brazil coming from renewable sources. Hydro playing a very important role in that, biofuels, ethanol, of which we sell a lot to California, by the way. And if you look only at electricity, about 85% of our electricity consumed in Brazil comes from natural sources. So we see a tremendous connection there when we're talking about, for instance, all the technology in ethanol with second generation, third generation ethanol coming into the fold, and this tremendous productivity growth, which enables Brazil to use only about 7.8% of our territory for agriculture and feed a population around the world, which is 5 times the population of Brazil. So I totally agree with you, Lieutenant Governor. There are many possibilities for further cooperation, for deepening what we're already doing and do more of it, and then bring scale to many projects in the whole area of ag tech and its connection to reducing emissions and greenhouse gases.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Forster. Lieutenant Governor, did you have something to add?
Well, I think maybe the only other thing that I would add is that we're just sort of the kickoff panel. We're going to be hearing from a lot of experts, and I want to just underscore the cooperation that the governor and my office have had has really manifested itself in the expansion of our international team in the governor's office of business and economic development. And I know we're going to be hearing from experts from GoBiz, but I just want for everyone listening to know that we take this very seriously, that rolling out the red carpet for businesses and visiting delegations, having them met by people from my office, but from the governor's office, and in particular from GoBiz, this is a real priority for us. And the same way that GoBiz has been there to help provide support for California and other US companies in doing business in California, they're now really stood up under the Newsom administration to provide that same kind of support for international companies. So I just want to thank everyone at GoBiz for all of their hard work, and make sure that everyone listening knows that they're there to help, and that we are truly very grateful to all of our international partners for investing in California and for purchasing California products in Brazil, and of course in so many countries around the world.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. And I do want to echo everything that you've said, and especially Ambassador Forster, when you're talking about agritech. I just want to let you know that GlobalSF is actually spending a lot of time now in food tech and agritech, and we look forward to bringing our innovation to Brazil and seeing how we can further strengthen that partnership. So I want to thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us this morning, as well as Ambassador Forster. Really appreciate your insights, and we will move on to our next panel and ask the specialists to answer the other questions. So thank you so much for joining us. And now on to our next panel. My colleague, Dr. Bruce Pickering, is joining us to moderate the next conversation. And the conversation will be on the economic overview and cooperation opportunities between Brazil and California. Good morning, Bruce, and glad to have you, and on to you.
Thank you so much, Darlene. Really appreciate it. And it's great to be here and be a part of such an interesting conversation. As you have heard, and by the way, this second panel is focused, the official title is the Economic Overview and Cooperation Opportunities between Brazil and California. So as you've all heard from our previous speakers, Darlene, Ambassador Ghanem, Ambassador Forster, and Ambassador and also Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. The US and Brazil have strong trade ties. According to the California Chamber of Commerce, Brazil is California's 29th largest export destination. And in 2020, California exported over $1 billion to Brazil, worth of products to Brazil. And again, as you've heard, it's computer and electronic components, chemicals, transportation equipment, and manufactured commodities. California imported $2.2 billion from Brazil and included oil, gas, chemicals, primary metal manufacturing, and food manufacturers. And as the ambassador pointed out, also apparently quite a bit of ethanol. This is a good start, but as Ambassador Forster mentioned, there are a range of areas for future growth, including particularly aerospace cooperation and green tech. And this discussion we'll look at are some of the issues that highlight the opportunities for Bay Area businesses to benefit from Brazil and California public-private partnerships and the Brazilian Public-Private Partnerships Program. With me to address this topic are Thomas Zanotto, Director, and I'm going to use the English here rather than the Portuguese titles. Thomas Zanotto is the Director of the Department of Trade and Foreign Affairs, DEREX, at the Federation of Industries for the state of Sao Paulo. My second guest is Gustavo Gomes, who is the Director of Investment Partnership Program, PPI. And the third panelist is from the Governor's Office of Business and Trade. It's Diana Dominguez, who is the trade representative for Americas, Australia, New Zealand. And so she is very well placed for this conversation. So with both Brazil and California as export-driven economies as the backdrop, I'd like to start with Mr. Zanotto and ask him, what are some of the key areas that look ripe for further expansion for Brazilian companies looking to grow and invest in California? And how you see the state's strengths match up with the growth of and directionality of the Brazilian economy?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, Ambassador Forster and Lieutenant Governor, they stole a little bit of my thunder, but that means that we are very aligned on the opportunities that there are between California and Brazil. I know California very well. I did my graduate studies at Stanford University, so I know the Bay Area very well. And I think let's start with agriculture, because it's it's very important. Brazil is one of the countries that defeated geographical determinants, because the fact is that due to technology and many generations of effort, Brazil produces now a lot of foodstuff and other agricultural commodities in areas that 30, 40 years ago technically was impossible to do. The savanna areas of Brazil, the Mato Grosso, these areas. So I think we have an agency called Embrapa, which is an agency focused on agricultural research. We worked with other countries also, like mainly Japan, in a program called PRODECER, a program of development of cerrado. So there is a lot of technology, a lot of need. Brazil is one of the biggest exporters and producers, as I said, in many agricultural foodstuffs and agricultural products, and also a big importer of fertilizers. And so this is a trade that it's very important on both sides. But there are other agricultural let's say frontiers in Brazil. The state of São Paulo, for example, is the state that has, people don't know it, but the biggest agro GDP in Brazil. It's more or less balanced with Mato Grosso, which is by far the biggest producer. But São Paulo produces more food stuff like avocados and nuts, and besides being the biggest producer of rubber. But now rubber in Brazil mostly planted forest. People think at Amazon. No, it's in São Paulo. some inroads into syntropic agriculture. So there are big opportunities in what the niche products that are now starting to be exported. Brazil also is a huge exporter of fruits from the northeast area of Brazil, which is an area where you have a very dry climate, it's a very we import by plane. We export by plane. We export. I was when the pandemic started in January last year, I was in Miami looking into fruit exports to the cruise industry, kind of melody, including because we have different seasons from the United States. Finally, there is the bioeconomy in the Amazon, which is also a huge, it's very important to have. And when I talk Amazon, I talk the Amazon has many different biomes, but I'm talking about the 30 million people that live in the Amazonic region, and that we have to find a way for them to gain a living, so that this can turn more effective our fight, a very fierce fight that we have here against deforestation. I'll turn to the second point, which I think is very important, is clean energy and environment, where Brazil has a very strong industry in clean energy and environmental energy. For example, solar energy here already has surpassed in gigawatts the capacity of the Itaipu Dam in Brazil, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, hydroelectric dam in the world. I think it goes of Three Gorges. Wind power. We are looking very much into a U.S.-Brazil energy forum on small modular nuclear reactors. Those reactors, the United States is very advanced in those kinds of reactors. They are much smaller, they are modular, they're very safe, and they are very clean. I mean, and they can solve a lot of problems in Amazon regions, in far-fetched regions where it's very hard to take the power lines, and also to decarbonize industry. I on my private hat, I work on a big steel, cement, and mining conglomerate, which is right at the center of the climate change problem, and we believe that to produce green steel, you need green hydrogen. To produce green hydrogen, you need a power source that's stable all the time. Like if you have 90 to 100% capacity working independently of the weather conditions, wind conditions, sun conditions. So those are fronts of cooperation. In airspace, the Alcantara base really, you can either have a payload of 30% more with the same fuel, or 30% less fuel, the same payload. So it's one of the best places to launch satellites. And Ambassador Foster talked about 5 or 6 that are already are scheduled in the short term, but I heard the other day podcast of Financial Times talking about the backlog of thousands of launch in space. Boeing is working together with Embraer, with the Brazilian aerospace company. It's working ahead on clean fuels that derive from where you save. You bring down like 90% of the air pollution, the CO2 emissions produced by airplane fuel. Naturally, they are still beginning, so they are mixing these fuels on kerosene fuel, on the air from like 10% to 90%. But you see that the potential to reduce CO2 emissions by by a long margin using these fuels, and this is why Boeing is very much invested on this project in Brazil. It's very important. We already talked about, I mean, all the big FANGs companies are here in Brazil very strong. The fintechs will probably, as Ambassador Gannon said, will probably have an IPO, which will be probably one of the biggest IPOs in value of a fintech in Brazil. There is huge potential of more cooperation between California and Brazil. Also, going back a bit before closing to agriculture in the northeastern part of Brazil, more on the eastern part, close to the beach, where normally they produce cocoa or stuff. There are some upstarts of syntropic agriculture, which avoids, by doing this agriculture, can avoid the use of pesticides of any kind, because by using natural things. So there are many initiatives where can work. And last but not least, Brazil just held one of the biggest 5G auctions in the world. With this 5G auction is around $10 billion US. Of those 10 billion, 90% are investments that are going to be done by the people who won the concessions on the thing. And I think 5G in Brazil, and I think in the world, will have a disruptive effect compared maybe to the iPhone and 4G, all the things that we had. So this is a huge thing. So I think I will remain here, and thank you very much for your attention. There is one question. I don't know if for questions later, which they ask Ambassador Gunning, and he later. Okay. I stay here. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sanoto. And what I'd like to do is ask Diana Dominguez to look at this question from the California side, and then ask Mr. Gomes to kind of look at this in a broader way where investment and partnerships fit in. So Diana, we've heard from the Brazil side. What about from the California side now?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. If I may just take a moment to introduce ourselves. Sometimes I dive right in. I recognize that not many sometimes folks aren't familiar with what GlobalSF does, and I think that'll help to provide some context to the response to the question you've posed. So,
okay.
As Bruce mentioned, I'm Diana Dominguez. I'm the Trade and Investment Representative for the Americas at the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, also commonly known as GOBEZ. I also want to recognize that my colleague Maria Honorado, who's also joining us today on the webinar, she's our foreign direct investment specialist, and she's on today's webinar alongside me to help answer any particulars related to inward expansion interests from those joining the group today. So for those of you that are new to GOBEZ, we're the state's leader for job growth, economic development, and business assistance efforts under the leadership of our director, Dee Myers. We have a number of teams that serve California businesses and communities. Maria and I in particular sit on the International Affairs and Trade team. We also have teams covering business investment services, a team that supports with permitting and regulatory assistance, small business startup, ZEV market development, tax credits, and grant opportunities. So international engagement is a big part of our California's economic success. I think that both ambassadors mentioned it at the opening today. We both handle billions of dollars in two-way trade, and we both equally rely on the skills and talents of our constituents. In California in particular, we have 40 million residents and 11 million immigrants, and we use that to leverage a leading position in the world's economy. So it's our international team's priority to support inward investment to California, increase California's exports, and build and expand California's international relationships. So jumping to your question, Bruce, in California, we're very fortunate in that the size of our economy means that we don't rely on any one industry. And I'm happy to highlight a couple of innovative sectors where we're seeing a lot of activity that may be of interest to the Brazilian companies. So in technology, we are a global leader in technological innovation. California's tech workforce is 1.9 million strong. That's nearly twice as many as the next ranked state. In biotech, we've got a long time home. We are long time home to the nation's #1 biomedical sciences research institution. And at nearly $4 billion annually, California's universities lead the US and earned National Institute of Health grants. AgTech, I think we've all addressed AgTech. Our state has a critical ecosystem to support cutting edge AgTech developments. We are home to the nation's top agricultural sciences university, and we have 11 tier 1 research universities making discoveries in everything from seed breeding to biofuel alternatives. And then, of course, advanced manufacturing. California manufacturing firms have created new industries and supplied the world with manufactured goods spanning from aerospace, computers, electronics, and most recently, zero-emission vehicles. So I know that we're getting some questions, so I'll stop there and turn it back over to you, Bruce.
Didn't want to unmute. Sorry. What areas, though, Diane, you see based on, and I know you gave a brief overview, what would be the areas you would say would be the ones that Brazil, with its move into aerospace and green tech, would be the areas where, and the regions that they should focus on if they were coming to California?
Sorry, my phone was stuck on mute and you blurted out. I think you asked what are the areas within aerospace and what, Bruce?
And green tech, that would be the areas that if I were an investor or somebody looking to participate in the California economy, where would you go? What would you suggest?
Geographically, well, so I think the best place to land for startups in particular, it's not unknown, it's San Francisco and Los Angeles, right? Both are very well known for the startup scene and also established industry sectors such as the ones that you mentioned. So I think Southern California for aerospace for sure, and Northern California is becoming well known for in the clean tech space, in particular in the Bay Area, as your team knows.
Cool, thank you very much. Gustavo, we've now had kind of a broad overview from Mr. Zanotto and Ms. Dominguez. From your perspective as a specialist in investment, where would this take you? Where would you look?
Well, good morning, Bruce. Good afternoon for those here in Brazil. It's a pleasure to be here today representing the Brazilian Investment Partnership Program in this webinar. First, I would like to do a brief explanation about the Brazilian Investment Partnership Program. It was a program created here in Brazil by the federal government that aims to attract private investment for infrastructure through concessions, privatizations, public-private partnership. And basically, with the creation of the PPI, there were two structures, a council, the PPI council that is compounded by ministers of states and the president of the republic that approve the strategic infrastructure projects for Brazil that we want to attract the private sector to invest. And also secretariat in which I take part, and is responsible, is a kind of investment hub here in Brazil for infrastructure sector, exactly for talking with national and international investors, embassies, multilateral agencies. It's like a place that aggregate all the investments opportunities here in Brazil in the infrastructure sector. So we have here in PPI, and I think many of the areas of the projects that are qualified in our projects have a lot of in common with the opportunities that we are talking here, especially those related to the transport sector. We have a very aggressive and a very strong pipeline of transport auctions. Here in Brazil, historically, the transportation was focused more in roads than in railways, and we are trying to change that. So we have a lot of railroad projects, and those railroads are extremely important for agriculture exportation, for example, because currently mainly it's through truck transport, so it's long distance, sometimes more than 1,000 kilometers through trucks and roads. So we have some projects that are exactly for implementing new railroads here in Brazil. And then we also have a new regulatory framework in the railroad sector that basically is very similar to the American Svg Rail Act. That is a framework in which the private sector can build the railroad by itself. It's private railroad, because previously in Brazilian legislation, it was only through concession and public ownership of the asset that would be considered for the private sector. And we are seeing a revolution in the sector. This new regulatory framework is recent, from last September, and in the last few months, more than $20 billion were announced of investments in railroad here in Brazil because of this new regulatory framework. I think moreover, there is the 5G auction that Mr. Zanotto talked before. It was in the last November, and it's very meaningful for investments in telecom sector, and would be a good opportunity for other technologies as Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, and all this kind of new investment that will be possible after the implementation of the 5G, especially next year. Some of the capital cities in Brazil it's already expected to have that technology implemented, and then other places will be implemented as well. So it's huge amount of investment. And just to finish my comments in this topic, as I said, we have a very strong portfolio of infrastructure projects to be auctioned here in Brazil. There are more than 170 infrastructure projects to be auctioned in different kind of sectors: roads, railroads, airports, ports. Most of them are very relevant for international trade. We have the privatization of the main port here in Brazil, in Santos, that is expected to happen next year. And also important airports here in Brazil. So we have a very huge portfolio for international investors. And also, I think after these auctions, a lot of investment will be necessary, and a lot of technology would be necessary for these projects. A lot of innovation would be possible through these concessions and PPPs. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Gustavo. So let me ask actually this question to everybody. But if I'm an American or a California investor, I want to invest in one of these areas that Gustavo and Mr. Zanotto have mentioned are likely areas, what would be my first stop and how would I proceed? And then I'm going to ask the same question of Diana for someone from Brazil coming to California. So this is open, but the first question is for either Gustavo or Mr. Zanotto.
Okay. Well, it depends on what sector you want to invest. See, Brazil, somewhat similar with the West in the sense that we have a lot of diversity. We are a country built also by immigration. We are the two biggest democracies in the Americas, and we have verticalized the industries from iron ore to appliances and automobiles and stuff. I mean, and so there are any sector that you think about investing in Brazil is interesting. Coming to São Paulo will be very important because you have the main investment banks here. You have the funds. Many American investment. If that's your question, if I understood your question, who should I talk to? We can help here at the Federation of Industries of States of São Paulo. We can help. The main investment banks are here in avenue that became famous in São Paulo because of this called Faria Lima, and you have all the investment banks, and they can tell you if you normally have to come with something in mind. For example, after this pandemic, and it's one sector that was not talked about here, the biomedical sector, the medicine sector. Brazil has one of the biggest national health programs, government health program called SUS, S-U-S. And this is what permitted Brazil be very successful in vaccination, because this we have every year we vaccine hundreds of millions of Brazilians because we are a tropical country. So we are used in Brazil. We almost have no fights about not getting vaccinated or getting vaccinated because the Brazilians are using that. And so we have some of the biggest biomedical firms here. But what we need is the production of the raw materials that go into the medicine. I mean, we don't have enough. So this is an area where to look for some resilience in the supply chain, you start with this area. The defense industry in Brazil is very advanced. We have a lot of talks with America. We have cooperation in defense industry with the United States, and we have with other countries. Brazil, it's very active in producing a lot of lethal and non-lethal defense industry equipment. So that it depends. You have to be specific, because it's like if I wanted to invest in the States, where should I go first? So it's a little bit. I mean, what you have in mind to invest, Brasilia is the political capital of Brazil. So once you have to go there to see, and São Paulo is a bit of the economic center, although Brazil has many important economic areas besides São Paulo. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, it was a good answer, and I know indeed it is sector specific, obviously. So Diana, are there incentives that GoBiz and the state have to encourage people to invest in certain areas, grants, consulting services, things that would be useful for people to know about?
Yeah, most certainly. I think that's where we do a great job, right? And so maybe perhaps for this question, I want to call upon our FDI specialist, Maria Honorado, who's an expert in a number of these incentives and can just quickly highlight some of the ones that might be of interest to the Brazilian states or regions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Diana. Firstly, Bruce, I wanted to respond to your previous question about where to begin. If you're a Brazilian business that's interested in California, I would say your first step would be please don't hesitate, get in contact. We are more than happy to help. At our office, we can help with permitting support, incentive navigation, which I'll circle back to, and of course, site selection, finding the right location for your business. We can also share details on other resources that are available to businesses all across the state. So, Diana had mentioned previously that San Francisco and Los Angeles have great thriving startup scenes. I would also add that, we always recommend businesses take a look at other regions. A lot of our communities are rolling out the red carpet for international startups. They've got incubators and accelerators. They can help you plug into networks in your industry to connect to capital and more. So I think that could be a really helpful resource. Additionally, just for your awareness, we have a kind of starter packet that walks through those first steps to getting started. And California just has abundant resources for innovators. I'd mentioned previously incubators and accelerators, those are key. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of Brazilian innovators, startup companies in robotics, in mobility, in health tech, in ag tech that are exploring opportunities globally. And California is such a great home for them. We really welcome that foreign investment. A lot of our universities have opportunities for industry partnerships. We have a statewide network of small business development centers that are available to help international companies get started. And there's so many networking opportunities so you can meet kind of key players in your sector to help you get started. Looking specifically at incentives, of course, being based in California is kind of an incentive in and of itself. This is a beautiful state, has a great quality of life. Additionally, we do, of course, have incentives for businesses. One that I would highlight specifically would be our California Competes tax credit. This is an income tax credit that's available to businesses that want to locate in California. It's available to all businesses, and there's an application round for California Competes that's opening up in just a couple of weeks. So businesses are competing for about $400 million in available tax credits, and there's a new grant program of $120 million under Cal Competes. We also have incentives to help kind of train and upskill your workforce. I'm thinking specifically of our employment training panel, which provides funding to employers to assist in upgrading the skills of their workers. I would note on that one that it's a funding agency, not a training agency. So the business really has ownership of what that training looks like. We have a research and development tax credit that's available to businesses that incur qualified research expenses while conducting research activity in California. I would note that according to KPMG and the Tax Foundation, California is a top 10 state for research and development centers and technology centers. And that's really just part of what has helped to make California such an innovative state and such a thriving ecosystem for companies that are really moving the needle. And of course, we have a variety of incentives that are really tailored towards people who are looking to solve tomorrow's problems. Cal Recycle offers grants to support the safe and effective management of the waste stream. The California Energy Commission has a couple of different grant programs to bring early stage clean energy concepts to market and to advance science and technology in the fields of energy efficiency and renewable energy. So that's a bit of a tasting menu. I know this has been a lot of information, but I would say just in closing, don't hesitate to reach out. We can help navigate all these questions and more.
Thank you, Maria. That was great. Mr. Gomes, actually a couple questions. One is we've seen all these pieces come together well. You're a specialist in investment. A couple of questions. As you know, California has a strong environmental background. We're getting questions about that. So if I'm a California and I want to invest in something that's carbon neutral or looks towards the future in a way that doesn't damage the rainforest, doesn't damage the Amazon, how would I do that in a way and take advantage of these opportunities that you and Mr. Zanotto mentioned, because I think that's important to many of the kind of key investors in the state now.
Yes, definitely, Bruce. Yeah, first I would like to compliment Mr. Zanotto answer about who they should look in Brazil for investment. If the investor is looking for infrastructure opportunity or investments in transport, sanitation, and this kind of things, energy, they should come to PPI, because as I said, we work as a hub for investments. So specifically for infrastructure sectors, we highly recommend to come to talk with us. We have all the projects opportunities here in Brazil, so we could support this conversation. Talking about carbon neutral and these opportunities, our projects pipeline look for this kind of investments. I can, for example, mention the last auction in November. That it was a very important road here in Brazil that connects Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. It's called Dutra, and in this road, one of the obligations of the new concessionaire was exactly to be carbon neutral. Like all the new road concessions here in Brazil, the concessionaires have this obligation to be carbon neutral. Moreover, all the infrastructure projects here in Brazil have a very strict license process, environmental license process. So when this infrastructure project starts the implementation, it means that they have the compliance of this environmental legislation that is very restricted here in Brazil. And one other sector that I would like to highlight that is like huge opportunity in Brazil is the water and sanitation sector. We have here in Brazil a huge deficit in this sector. And last year we have also a new regulatory framework for this sector. And after that framework, we have important auctions that aims to improve the coverage of water sanitation in many regions in Brazil. And that's very important because there are a lot of people in Brazil nowadays that don't have this sanitation and treated water access. And through these concessions and through these partnerships contracts, would be allowed to have a large coverage and also to reduce all the inefficiencies and water loss related with the current projects. So I think water and sanitation will be specifically a very important sector here in Brazil for the next years. We already had some important auctions, and in the next years we will have two. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. So we're about out of time, but we have just enough time maybe to go around and just have some final thoughts. So I'll start with Mr. Zanotto and just go around really quickly. Any final thoughts you have?
There are also the state development agencies. The state of São Paulo has the city of São Paulo, which is 12 million strong people. There's 12 million people. They have Invest São Paulo that's also focused on investments. But again, for example, just a few days, a couple of weeks ago, the state of Ceará in the northeast of Brazil wants to focus on to be the center, the Brazilian center for production of green hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced because they have a lot of sun in a very dry area, and they've been successful. So it's very important when you come to a country big as Brazil. Mr. Gomes cited most of the projects that are all infrastructure projects, but there will be huge projects done by private people also in Brazil. Like I said, someone that already produces medicines from things and wants to verticalize into the upstream. Will need a partner from abroad. So it depends on what you want. You have to come to Brazil knowing more or less what you want. In agriculture, we cited here 3 or 4 kinds of different agriculture. Airspace, depending on the country. So you can come to FIES, and we have 13 departments here that actually in all areas, from infrastructure to science and technology to agribusiness and they can give you a first idea. I mean, and then once you more or less closing on what you want, definitely you have. Depending on what we're going to invest, you go to Brasilia, you go to the state, to the certain state, the development agency, and see how they can help you. There are many incentives to do that. Okay, so I think the main idea as a businessman, what I say is that it's like if I want to invest in the United States, I have to know what I want to invest, and then I'll close in very, very quick and go to the development agencies like the one that Mrs. Honorato named.
Thank you. So, okay, we are actually over time. Does anybody have one last thought that they want to give us before I turn the mic back to Darlene?
Thanks, Bruce. I just want to give a quick thank you to everyone who's joined us, and we welcome the opportunity to collaborate with Brazilian states and regions, and want to echo the Lieutenant Governor's words for thanking everybody for their important work that they're doing. And GoBiz is happy to be a first point of contact to any Brazilian folks that are interested in coming into the state. And I know we wanted to highlight very quickly our participation at Select USA this coming June, but I think that'll be a great opportunity for us to meet with any incoming delegations that would be interested in meet with up to 20 different economic development organizers throughout the state. So I'll turn it back over to you, Bruce.
Thanks.
Additional comments.
Gustavo, Maria, any last words?
Just to echo Diana, we look forward to meeting more Brazilian businesses at Select USA, and thank you all so much for joining. We're happy to connect further about all of this.
Great, Gustavo.
I would like to thank you again, GlobalSF, for the invitation for this panel. And as I said, PPI is the house of infrastructure investment here in Brazil. We are open for further conversations with investors. Thank you, Bruce.
Wonderful. Thank you all for participating. Goodbye.
Yep. And thank you so much, Bruce, for moderating such an interesting conversation. There definitely are a lot of opportunities between Brazil and California, and a lot of it starts here, either in San Francisco or in Los Angeles. Let's look at the sectors. And moving on, I'm really now happy to welcome our next panel, Building Partnerships in Innovation and Technology, focused on agribusiness. Agritech is huge. I just want to also mention that in San Francisco, even though we are now the largest biotech hub in California, we've actually grown and beyond that of San Diego, that agritech, a lot of that comes out of biotech, and that we'll be doing a lot in that area. But I just wanted to welcome Michael Ranelli. He's the investment officer of Apex Brazil, and he will be moderating today's conversation on agribusiness and agritech and all that good stuff. So on to you.
Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure. So good morning, everyone. Greetings from the warm and sunny South Florida, Miami. Welcome to the third panel of this webinar, which will be a discussion on innovation perspectives in agribusiness with two terrific Brazilian panelists. I'm so excited to start this conversation. With all the due respect to previous panels, but I think we saved the best for last. My name again is Michael Ranelli. I'm the investment officer for Apex Brazil in North America. Apex Brazil is the Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. We promote Brazilian exports, international trade, and foreign direct investments in Brazil. Primarily, we facilitate business development free of charge, which is very important to mention, to help international businesses and organizations that want to do business, invest, trade, and form partnerships for business or technology exchange with Brazil. Our network of offices around the world operates in close collaboration with Brazilian embassies and consulates. I'm based in Miami, as I said, which is currently our only office in the United States, but next year we will reopen our office in San Francisco, which was closed last year due to the pandemic. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's panels, especially our two panelists. Dr. Celso Moretti. I'm going to have issues because in Portuguese we say Celso Moretti, and in English I think I should adapt to Celso Moretti, but also Karen Gerhardt. So welcome everyone. I would like first, to start this conversation with presenting our two panelists, but I also would like to express my gratitude to GlobalSF and the Brazilian consulate in San Francisco for the kind of invitation for me to moderate this panel. It's a real pleasure to be here. Now I'll make a brief introduction of our two panelists, starting with Dr. Moretti, who has a bachelor's degree in agronomy and a master's degree and PhD in plant science. He has been a researcher with Embrapa since 1994. And he has dedicated the last 13 years to public administration. He's an alumnus of the Harvard School of Government at Harvard University. He's also a courtesy associate professor with the University of Florida since 2006. Dr. Moretti is a member of the Global Panel for Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition in the United Kingdom, and executive board member of several associations, such as the Cooperative Program for Technological Development of Agriculture and Agri-Industry in the Southern Cone of the Americas, also for the Brazilian Association of Agribusiness, and also for the Council of Agribusiness of the Federation of Industries of the state of São Paulo. He is author and book chapters, editor of technical books, and the author of scientific papers in national and international journals. He has extensive international experience, having presented scientific papers and delivered lectures, seminars, and conferences in more than 40 countries. He was a consultant to the United Nations Development Program for China and the Inter-American Development Bank in the United States. He's currently the president of Embrapa. I know my colleagues who spoke before me spoke fondly about Embrapa, but I'd like also to add that Embrapa is the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, and instead established public company under the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture, which has done a phenomenal job over the past 48 years to transform Brazil from a food importer to one of the world's largest agricultural producers and exporters. It's such an amazing Brazilian research organization that has at its core the mission to provide feasible solutions for the sustainable development of the agricultural sector through knowledge and technology. Brazilians are very proud of Embrapa. So I'd like to give a special welcome to Dr. Celso Moretti, current president of Embrapa. Welcome to our meeting, Dr. Moretti.
Thank you very much, Marco. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm delighted and very excited about this.
It's our honor, sir. I also have a great pleasure to introduce you to Karen Gerhardt. Karen heads the Corporate Innovation Unit at Svg Ventures Thrive, an agri-food investment and innovation ecosystem firm located in Silicon Valley that accelerates, invests, and works with entrepreneurs and investors, and is also committed to accelerating and scaling up promising technologies in food and agriculture. Karen's key mission is to drive growth and transformation in the global agri-food value chain through open innovation and the development of innovation ecosystems. Karen has worked with leading agri-food organizations such as Land O'Lakes, Nestle, Driscoll's, Cicero, Corfax, Graincorp, and Kubota, identifying opportunities and strategies to innovate and partner with startups. Karen has a master's degree in food science and technology and a bachelor's degree in food engineering from the Federal University of the state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. It's also a wonderful university that I'm proud to say that I'm also attended the same university and it's my alma mater. Welcome again, Karen. Thank you for joining us. It's a privilege to have you with us. So, Dr. Moretti, I would like to start with you. So please tell us more about yourself, Embrapa, and about your role in innovation and agribusiness. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's once again, it's a great pleasure to be here today. I would like to thank for the opportunity. I'd like to thank GlobalSF. I'd like to greet Ambassador Nestor Foster and Ambassador Gani, also the former participants, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. Of course, I'm here at the Consulate General of Brazil in San Francisco, so I would like to greet and thank Ambassador Adanu and all his team, and also say hi to Karen Gerhardt, and last but not least, everybody that's following us online. Well, I'm very lucky to be, the president of Embrapa, an institution that is in the heart of this fantastic transformation that we have in Brazil during the last almost 5 decades, from transforming Brazil from being a food net importer to one of the powerhouses of food, fiber, and bioenergy productions. We basically did that by transforming the Cerrado, transforming the acidic poor soils into fertile land. I'm talking about 204 million hectares of land. We also, second pillar, we adapted plants and animals to tropical conditions. And now, as sustainability is in the heart of our strategy, and sustainability is in the heart of the strategy of many different businesses, we are really focused on developing low carbon agriculture, carbon neutral agriculture. So we have 8,000 employees, 2,200 researchers that are in charge of developing solutions for the problems of Brazilian agribusiness, and of course, partnering with other institutions and other places like here in California in the US. So many opportunities. One of the most innovative sectors in Brazil is agriculture, and phenomenal what we did, and it's phenomenal what we can still do.
Very good. Thank you. That's an amazing journey experience, Dr. Moretti. So now I'd like to turn the mic to Karen Gerhardt. So Karen, please give us more information about yourself and about your current work at the Svg Ventures Thrive and your role in innovation in agribusiness. The mic is yours, Karen.
Sure. Thank you so much, Michael. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you, and a pleasure to join this panel with you, Sal. So really wonderful. So, and thank you all for joining us today, and for GlobalSF for inviting. So Svg Ventures is an investment and ecosystem for food and agriculture innovation. I joined the company in 2019, but we have been working with startups and investing in agri-food startups since about 10 years ago. We have invested in more than 50 companies around the world. We have 2 Brazilian companies that we invested already, which are Agro now. Now it's the Agro, and also AgroSmart. So really great companies coming from Brazil. And we are actually now, we are hosting an event, the Thrive Latin Challenge, that is being hosted at the same time now. We have a live stream. So if you want to watch later, you can do that on YouTube. But our key mission is to transform food and agriculture through innovation, and by connecting startups and corporations with the mission of really developing new technologies and new solutions for all the challenges that we face now in agriculture. So we are the top one ag-tech investor by Crunchbase, and we were also voted by AgFunder as the top agri-food accelerator in the globe. So basically, I think that's it. And just another note: we have 3 Brazilian finalists in our Latin Challenge, which is wonderful. Yeah. So and I think that's it, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That's a great introduction, Karen. You and your organization are doing amazing work. We follow you all the time here, and hope we can increase even more of the investments that you bring to Brazil and to the Brazilian agri-tech companies. So I'd like to turn the questions back to Dr. Moretti and ask him, what are the key areas that will benefit from innovation in agribusiness over the next 10 years?
Thank you, Michael. As I have no doubt that digital agriculture is going to be one of the key areas and themes that will benefit from innovation. Here in California, as we all know, we have many startups, many agri-techs, and I had meetings yesterday in San Diego discussing artificial intelligence, discussing the use of sensors, drones, Internet of Things. We have already developed a lot in terms of solutions. So face recognitions for cattle, so we can manage cattle without a lot of stress. So digital agriculture is one of the fields. I have no doubt bioeconomy is also a sector that will evolve really fast. The business of bioproducts, as everybody's concerned about climate change and low carbon agriculture and carbon neutral agriculture, developing solutions that are based on the environment or based on biology is something that we are doing. So we already released in the market different bioproducts. One that acts in phosphate that is in the soil. So 2 bacteria that works on the phosphate and making more available. I have no doubt also, Mike, that synthetic biology play a tremendous work and role in the future of sustainable agriculture. So gene editing, we are working with different companies for gene editing, working on soybean that is more resistant to drought, common beans, and finally, sustainability, integrated crop, livestock, and forestry systems, where we develop the carbon neutral beef. It's already market. So, and then I can mention that later on.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I'd like to ask a similar question to Karen, who works directly with an ecosystem of very innovative startups. The same question, basically. And what do you think, Karen, are the key areas that will benefit the most from innovations in agribusiness?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I align with Celso in many areas that he shared. Basically, ag digitization. So digitizing agriculture is there's so many opportunities there, so many startups and big corporations developing solutions, and research institutes like Embrapa and so many. So we have been seeing a lot of traction there, and that's going to be key to develop new data, to be able to utilize, to understand more how agricultural systems work, right? You need data to be able to analyze and and get insights. So a lot of traction there. Anything that relates to sustainability, like everybody mentioned, there's a heavy need on that from all over the globe, right? So our partners, our corporate partners and our startups are trying to solve that through different ways, right? Soil regeneration and efficient use of fertilizers and pesticides. And so precision agriculture, there are so many ways, right? Water management that you can really be more effective in the way that you do agriculture, right? Ag biotechnology, which Celso also mentioned, the potential of using CRISPR, and now the rapid phenotyping technologies that you can leverage vision technologies to measure how plants are growing and developing, because you don't only need to know the genes, but you also need to see if these genes are being expressed, right? So rapid phenotyping is really helping out as the next step after the gene editing. So a lot of things coming there. And another point that we see a lot here and is going to pick up greatly are alternative proteins. So technologies are really evolving on that end. And you know, in the past, we almost couldn't eat alternative alternative protein products. They were not tasty and consumers were not accepting that. But now we got to a point where they are delicious and they are comparable to the traditional products, right? So there is a big shift and big push from many investors and from all over the globe to reduce how much we are consuming in terms of animal protein, and big push to develop new solutions to reduce the carbon impact of that as well. So I think those are the four key areas of opportunities for the future.
Very good, very good. I'm a big fan of biotechnology and synthetic biology, but my background is in business development and business management. But I had the pleasure to work for a company based in California that used to develop technologies for the production of renewable chemicals, renewable biofuels, basically products that can be turned into energy and are very sustainable. So I'm a big believer in synthetic biology, fermentation, and using microbes and other types of fermentation devices, you know, that can actually bring new products like the meats and the proteins of the future. So thank you very much, Karen. So turning back to Dr. Moretti, Brazil is among the 105 countries that signed the Global Methane Pledge during COP26 in Glasgow, which commits signatories to reducing their overall emissions by 30% by 2030. That's a very aggressive goal. Do you believe science and technology will contribute to reduce methane emissions, and will they deliver on this commitment? How Brazil and the world can achieve this goal?
Yes, Michael, I was there in COP26. I spent 12 days there and was an amazing experience, you know, having a chance to show to the world that Brazil already moved from words to action. During the last 30 years, we have been working really consistently in terms of low carbon and carbon neutral agriculture. And when the discussion came to the table on the global methane initiative, we discussed within Embrapa and within the production chains in Brazil, and we discussed, of course, with our Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Supply in Brazil. And my opinion was yes, that we could be, we could sign that pledge to reduce, 30% of methane emissions by 2030, based on the emissions of 2020. It's a global ambition, and we actually, Michael, Carrie, and all the others that are following us today, Brazil already doing this, and how we are doing, how we are contributing to reduce methane emission. Three strategies to reduce emission. First, through genetic breeding of pastures, of grasses. We are developing more digestible grasses to our cattle. So if it's more digestible, there is a lower production of methane. So right there we have first pillar. The second pillar, through genetic breeding of our animals, of our breeds in Brazil, and we have both European breeds and the Indian Bos Taurus and Bos Indicus from India. We are getting able to slaughter animals earlier. So during the last 10 years, we reduced 25% the life of an animal on the farm. So from 48 months to 36 months. So right there, if the animal stays less on the field, on the pasture, less of methane. And the third strategy is the utilization of additives. So we are adding additives to their diet, and so tablets and essential oils are being added to their diet, and that is contributing to the reduction of methane. So this is the whole part of the one strategy with three different pillars, and we have a second strategy, which is compensation of emissions. So we are already using integrated crop, livestock, and forestry system, where in the very same area we have the cattle, we have agriculture, so like corn or soybean, and then we have the forest component. And the amount of methane that is produced by the animals is neutralized by the two other components. So I have no doubt, Michael, that by 2030, livestock production in Brazil will be more efficient and more competitive and more sustainable.
That's wonderful news. We're all hoping for that. So turning back to Karen. Karen, how startups are shaping agri-food innovation? And by that, I mean how agri-tech is shaping farming and how food tech is shaping the food industry. Do you see any unicorns in the foreseeable future? Karen?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, startups, what we had in the past is big corporations working in agriculture and establishing the key practices and fields which were disseminated, right? And everybody followed the same, almost the same process. So what we saw is that many challenges came from that, right? Using the same technologies all over the globe. So now, and the challenges with these big organizations is very difficult to bring change, right? To innovate and develop new solutions, right? And implement the solution. So startups are much more agile and they are able to develop things much faster and in a much faster and optimized way, and return it to corporations. So the way that we worked at SVG Thrive is exactly doing that. So bringing startups that can easily deploy a new product or a new service to a big corporation trying to innovate internally, but without the needed speed. So I see a big transformation coming from this, smaller companies that quickly can identify a problem and bring solutions, and corporations and investors in the other way, and even organizations such as Embrapa. Embrapa is supporting our LATAM challenge, and I appreciate here also they are actually supporting 3 of our LATAM challenge finalists by connecting their resources and researchers and labs to help these companies to accelerate their solutions. So I really see that as the future of innovation, and hope to see and already see that happening.
Very good. Thank you very much. This is very promising. Dr. Moretti, this is for you. So governments and companies are moving towards a net zero economy. How is the agribusiness going to contribute? Is it possible to reduce greenhouse gases emissions and still be competitive?
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for the question. As we just saw in the last 2 panels, governments and companies are racing towards a net zero economy. So China put their pledge on 2060, Brazil, USA, Denmark, Australia to 2050. States like California, we just listened from Lieutenant Governor that California will be a net zero state by 2045. And I have no doubt that for a country like Brazil, agribusiness will play a major and a key role in contributing to a net zero economy. It's very important to mention, Michael and Karen and others, that low carbon and net zero will drive all different business all over the world. Now, the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, sent a letter to all his clients last January saying that there is no business in the world that won't be profoundly affected by the need to decarbonize or to reduce carbon emissions. And in Brazil, we have been doing this since the last 30 years in agriculture. So we developed a no-till system, so we do not need to report the soils to produce 125 million tons of soybean. We are using no-till technology in 50 million hectares. We are using nitrogen fixation. So in all the 37 million hectares of soybean, we are not using nitrogen fertilizer that comes from a fossil fuel source. So we are using bacteria to sequestrate nitrogen from the atmosphere and deliver to the soybean. So only with this technology, Michael, last year, Embrapa made all the calculation, and we saved to our growers $5.5 billion dollars in terms of buying fertilizers. And because we use bacteria instead of using, a nitrogen fertilizer, we did not emit 100 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So, and right there, Michael, I'm just giving these 2 examples to show that, yes, it is possible to reduce greenhouse gases emissions using different strategies, different technologies, and still be competitive. And I have no doubt if we are already feeding almost 1 billion people in the world, in the near future, we will feed even more.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great initiative, great numbers. It's a really favorable type of futuristic vision that we have with your efforts in Brazil. So we're almost out of time. We still have a few minutes, but I want to squeeze some more questions here. So Karen, this one, is for you. So what are the opportunities in California for agri-food technologies coming from Brazil? And even Embrapa is it's an organization that can supply technologies to the world. So what's your view on California as a market for agri-food technologies from Brazil?
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So the key areas that I see Brazil supporting California are connected to our key challenges here in California. So one of them is labor shortage. So at the moment, 80% of our workers in agriculture are immigrants. So 80%, it's a lot, right? So some of them are located here, some of them are temporary immigrants. So California relies heavily on that because our agriculture is pretty focused on specialty crops. So wine crops, grapes, and fruits and vegetables. So many of the practices in the fields require handwork, right? So we have been working with our partners to develop automations, but there's still a lot of room to improve that. So how to automatize this kinds of works that actually are not attractive to people. And we also see a decrease in terms of the rural population here in California. So another point is on the water management. So over 90% of California is now in a big and very severe drought. So we have been experiencing several fires and damaging even to agriculture in terms of not having enough water for crops, and even people are even cutting trees to preserve some of them to survive. So really, really difficult to see agriculture facing that. And so agriculture actually uses 40% of all water here. So how to optimize that with precision irrigation and all kinds of technologies that can preserve water. Another problem is also nitrates infiltrating groundwater. So we have been experiencing issues with that as well, especially in areas that we need a lot of nitrogen to fertilize soil. So what are other technologies we could be implementing that Embrapa is developing, or other Brazilian startups are developing, or organizations that we could apply here? And the third area that we mentioned many times is sustainability. Anything that relates to sustainability, how can we implement it here in our systems that, you know, on the top of specialty crop, dairy is also a very important commodity product here in California. So how to make it more sustainable as well. So these are the key areas that I see of opportunities in California to cooperate with Brazil.
Very good, thank you. Karen, I'd like to keep the conversation going with you. So I'd like to make this the opposite direction and ask you, what areas can California food tech companies can collaborate with agri-food innovation in Brazil? I know that California has cooperated with the Brazilian production of grapes in the northeast of Brazil that has been very successful. So what can you add to this and tell us more about how California can contribute and collaborate with innovation with Brazil?
Sure. So in California, I see that is a very key state here to collaborate with Brazil in agri-food tech. And I say that I think is the key state because it's a combination of being the top one producer of food in the United States, and having the talent and infrastructure to innovate, right? We have great universities. We have UC Davis that already have a lot of connections with Brazil. I even talked with the professor there that he was speaking very highly about Embrapa, that they were already connected there. So the connections are already present. Of course, we have California Institute of Technology, a lot of labs that could be cooperating in several areas, right? But the strength of the agricultural production and the presence of farmers and corporations here is very strong. And also on the top of that, we have a huge access to investors. So startups from Brazil coming here with our support, they can really grow and thrive. So very unique to California and especially the Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And also the access that we have to the globe. So the whole globe is here. So providing that access to other organizations around agri-food technologies and solutions. And I think I'm very happy to be a Brazilian and to be here in Silicon Valley in California, and then to be able to help out as well to promote this connection. So that's why I'm so excited to be here also in this event.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Moretti. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to ask the same question. What are your insights about this bilateral relationship and cooperation between California and Brazil in agricultural technologies?
I totally agree with Karen. I see many opportunities, many possibilities, and that's why you're here this week to meet with different institutions in California. I'm 100% sure that sustainability will be central in the heart of our strategy and the cooperation. After fintechs and agri-techs, we are really talking about now on climate techs because of all the impact and the demands on greenhouse gases emissions. And of course, we also have the carbon credits. So there is a market out there on carbon credits. And so I see many opportunities for us in Brazil and here in California to cooperate on the sustainable development of the production of food, fiber, and bioenergy. And Embrapa will be there at your disposal, looking forward to cooperate with you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Moretti. I don't know if we have more time. I think we went over a little bit, but let me know if you can squeeze one more question or if you need to stop right here.
Yes, you can take some Q&A now.
All right. Okay. So let's do this open to our audience for questions. I would like to ask the help from Anthony if he has seen any questions that I can actually ask to our panel. Well, in the meantime, I'll just ask Dr. Moretti again. Is Embrapa and Brazil collaborating with other countries towards the goals of solving some of the solutions about the reducing the gas emissions to promoting sustainability in agriculture and other things like that? Is Embrapa working with other countries besides the United States?
Yes, definitely. We cooperate with 47 countries all over the world. We have an office here in the DC, Washington, DC area. So Dr. Varela, one of our researchers, is here based in the US. Mm-hmm. We have an office in Montpellier, France, looking into Europe and the cooperation with Europe. And I just came back from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and we are establishing a business office there too. And of course, all the work that we do in Africa with different African countries, So yes, we partner with many different countries focusing on sustainable development, agriculture, and food security. So for many countries, food security is key. And we just developed a tropical wheat variety. And when we talk about wheat, we are talking about food security. So I'm really excited about this new wheat variety that can be grown on the tropics.
Very good. I'd like to ask a question to Karen here, if you still have time, because we overheard some of our speakers saying that Brazil has great conditions for the launching of satellites. We all know the role that satellites monitoring and sensoring plays in agriculture. Does any of you has an insight in how satellites and communications technologies, sensoring technologies is contributing, and how much more this industry will grow and how this will benefit for agricultural development in a sustainable way? Either one of you, please.
Yeah, on the startup perspective, we see a lot of startups working in that area. So measuring all kinds of information from the fields from distance, which is very important because you don't need sensors in the fields. You can monitor from distance. So actually that's very beneficial and a much cheaper way to do measurements in agriculture. So the impact is huge in terms of understanding the fields. You can measure even soil characteristics and water. So you can actually automatize and digitalize your systems by leveraging that. So it's definitely one of the key resources now that we have to improve how we do agriculture in the whole world.
Very good. Would you like to add, Dr. Moretti?
Yeah, I agree with Karen in terms that sustainability and the role of startups they're playing. It's crucial. It's central, and so the partnership between the public and private sector, Embrapa research, and startup is very important. So I agree with Karen.
Very good. Thank you. So we went over the limit a little bit. I would like to give you the opportunity of the last few words if you'd like to, or just turn back to Darlene.
If you want to do last few words, it is 10:55. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So if anybody still has at least one burning piece of information they want to share, because I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody learned a lot today.
Yes, if you allow me, of course, illegal deforestation is a critical question for us in Brazil. Brazil has one of the most modern legislations on land expansion. If you have a farm in the Amazon biome, you have to preserve 80% of your farm, and you can use only 20%. So 99% of our growers, they are following and coping with the law, and 1% or less than that are criminals that are doing illegal deforestation. So that's something that we still need to work on, and we have technology to support growers that are doing the right thing, and I have no doubt that we will improve the situation, and we will produce food with increased sustainability. So that was my last view here, and was once again a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Karen, we're good?
Yes, just wanted to thank you, everybody, Darlene and the GlobalSF for the invitation. It was a real pleasure to join this panel, and Celso, would love to meet you in person sometime, and also Michael, hopefully we have this opportunity as soon as COVID stops hurting
Exactly.
people. So
I'm looking forward to. So thank you very
Definitely.
much again, Dr. Moretti, Karen Gerhardt. Thank you so much. That
And
was a
thank
great
you.
conversation. Thank you,
Yes.
Darlene. Back to you.
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much, Michael. You moderated a really good panel. And I just want to say I definitely learned a lot, but it just shows that there is so much in agribusiness that we can do and look at it from an innovation perspective. And especially since our both economies, a big percentage of it is based on agriculture. But the normal, I mean, a lot of people just don't realize it. So I'm glad we're able to touch on it today. Thanks again, Michael, for joining us and for doing such a great job. And
Thank
so
you,
with
my
that,
pleasure.
yeah. And so with that, you know, again, I think everybody learned a lot about Brazil today. You learned probably more and probably surprised. There are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of similarities between Brazil and California. And a lot of it, because of its innovation, it does start here in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, and most importantly, in the state of California. So I wanted to thank all our speakers today, most notably Ambassador Forrester, Ambassador Ganem, and Ambassador Kounalakis, because even, you know, once an ambassador, you're always an ambassador, as I always say. A reminder that today's program was recorded and can be accessed on our website, www.globalsf.biz. Please feel free to sign up for our newsletters where you can follow our activities and then listen to our future podcasts. We're always looking to see what the trends are and what can be coming up so that you can invest in and find an opportunity in. To contact us, you can email us at info@globalsf.biz. And with that, thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye and have a good day. And we're ending this early now, 10:59. I just also want to close and say that any questions that were not answered, you will be receiving an email with an answer. So thanks a lot and feel free to contact us. Thank you all again and have a good day.